Welcome to the Masters in Motion podcast. Today we have a special episode with the release of the information about the 2024 CrossFit Games for Masters athletes in Birmingham, Alabama on Labor Day weekend. We wanted to get in touch with Bob Jennings, the co-founder of the Legends Championship, who is the host for the CrossFit Games, to go behind the scenes, understand how all of this came together, and talk about the 2024 CrossFit Games season for Masters athletes. It's an episode packed full of information for Masters athletes. This episode is powered by Thirdsy, your go-to for game-changing sleep recovery. Imagine hitting your workouts harder and waking up feeling unstoppable. That's what Thirdsy's PM Recovery Collagen does for me. It's like a pre-workout, but for your sleep, fueling your body's active recovery processes without any melatonin or sedatives. Just one scoop before bed supports deeper, more restorative sleep so you can crush your fitness goals. Ready to experience your best rest and recovery? Visit Thirdsy.com and transform your nights into recovery power hours. Save 20% using this code, JASONZZZ. That's JASONZZZ. Thirdsy, because sleep is the ultimate recovery tool. Here with a special episode of the Masters in Motion podcast, I've got Rick and I've got Bob Jennings. Bob Jennings is one of the co-founders of the Legends Championship and has been working like crazy to put together everything for the Masters Games this year. So Bob, thanks for taking the time to jump on the call with us today. And we're excited to hear how all of this came together for you. The announcement is live. And if people don't know, so the CrossFit Games, the Masters CrossFit Games by Legends will be Labor Day weekend in Birmingham, Alabama, my new hometown. So not upset about that turn of events, and it's going to be really exciting. There's not just the games happening, but there's some other things happening as well, and we're going to get into all that. But Bob, tell us about what the past few months have been like for you. I know you've had some radio silence as you've been working on some of this stuff, not just the Legends Championship, which went very well in Arizona, but you're doing all kinds of other things in the background. So catch us up.
Sure. Yeah, you bet. And thanks for having me on, guys. Always a pleasure to talk to you guys, as colleagues, but as friends as well. Always enjoy catching up with you too.
Likewise.
So, the last couple of months, man, it really kind of goes back a little further than that. The quest for a site has really been going on since the initial conversations with Castro, right? I mean, this is, finding a venue that, has the capacity to handle 450 plus individual athletes. And now, of course, we're throwing in, 50 teams on top of that. So there's another 200 athletes on top of that. Finding something in the right date and time frame and the right price range and, all of the things that go into that is, it's a full-time job, man. Like, no doubt about it. It takes a lot of effort to, find the right place to have an event like this. And, it was a struggle. I mean, it really, honestly, it was a struggle. What you don't realize kind of behind the scenes, is it really takes about 2 years to lock in a site.
That was going to be a question. Yep.
Yeah. And so like we kind of were a year behind just to start, because what happens is all of these you have to go with a big convention center, right? Or
Right.
something that's sizable enough, and I'll get into why we needed a big convention center a little later, but end of the day, you have to go with a big convention center. And what I've come to find out is big convention centers are booked 2 years in advance. So, finding the right mix of right city, right size of convention center and date was really, it was fucking hard, man. I mean, that's the only way to put it. It was really fucking hard. But I'm thrilled that we ended up in Birmingham. It was high on my list to begin with. And I think that the community is going to end up being really happy with it.
Well, I was going to say the country was your canvas, but it was really narrowed down because of the time constraint that you were working under, right? I mean, that was, you could kind of pick wherever fit, but you just didn't have time to book.
That falls into it a little bit, right? But so here's kind of the criteria when you step through it. So we need something big enough that we can do 3 fields of play at the same time, right? In order to effectively move everyone through a games level championship, right? Which is going to be 8+ events, 450 athletes, competing through that. You need to be able to operate 3 fields of play at the same time. Otherwise, you're looking at scenarios where you're working out at 8 a.m., you're working out at 5 p.m., you're working out at 8 p.m. And like, that's a terrible athlete experience, right? So 3 fields of play was kind of critical. If we couldn't get something in San Diego, pretty much, or Southern California, we wanted to make sure that we were indoors, because everything outside that time of year just becomes logistically challenging, right? Whether it's extreme heat that you're going to run into in most cities that time of year, or heat and humidity, or quite frankly, rain, right?
Right. Yeah.
I know you guys have competed at Wadapalooza before, and I personally don't want to have to manage the CrossFit Games around the weather schedule, right? So, and
then having to change events out of safety concerns, considerations, having a backup workout. What a nightmare.
100%.
Backup equipment.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. It's difficult enough to manage all the logistics of this. So let's just take the weather element out of the equation completely. Right.
Okay.
Then, so focus on the athlete experience, right? Making sure we have enough fields of play, making sure that we're moving athletes through, making sure they're enjoying themselves, making sure that it's safe for the athletes. Then you start to think about, travel logistics, right? Do we want to stay on the West Coast? Well, that's not really all that fair to all the European athletes, right? And the South American athletes, right?
Yeah,
like it's just that much further that they have to travel. Birmingham is a great location because it is a 2-hour straight shot drive from the busiest airport in the world, in Atlanta, right?
Yep.
There's you can get a commuter flight from any of the major hubs, right? Whether it's Charlotte or Houston or Newark or any of those places, right? So even from the US, it's a relatively easy place to get to. So that played into it. And then cost comes into play too, right? Like there are some cities that we looked at that we were thinking like, man, it would be really great to have it in city X, but it just blew out the budget, right? And there's so much more that we want to do and provide for the athletes that if you blow everything on rent, it really ties our hands, So then, even when you get into that, then it takes you even one step further and you start to think about like, okay, let's say we have it in, big city X, right?
Sure.
Big city X does not care that we're there, right? They don't care that the CrossFit, mean, LA did not care that the CrossFit Games was in LA.
100%.
Right? Did not care at all. Birmingham is going to roll out the red carpet for us. I mean, they're thrilled for us to be there. And I think that that's a really important part of it as well. Having a city that's a partner that wants us to be there. So you kind of wrap all that up together. And then it's like, okay, here's the date window that we have. And unfortunately, the only one that we could secure was on the same weekend as the teenagers. But in an ideal world and planning going forward, that won't be the case in future years. Right. I think Dave alluded to that in their press release. Like we've already started working on 2025. So, it's nobody at the end of the day, nobody really wants that to happen. There are definitely some logistical challenges potentially for some coaches, right? But you're talking about edge cases here at this point.
Correct. It's not a 100% foolproof, but you're going to have issues one way or the other.
You can't solve for everybody, right? And so we're trying to solve for 99%, right? And there's the 1% that I'm sorry. Like I'm going to tell you right now, I'm sorry that I didn't solve this for you, but I couldn't.
And in a transition year, you think about it, it's a transition year. You know, this is the first year that something's happening. The first year that this is making this in, you know, this isn't the only event that has some overlap, right? The Wheel Wad is happening the same time as Wadapalooza, California, same weekend. Yeah. And so there's, it's a season as well of, you know, this is just, it's competition season. You know, it seems like this is just kind of where they all end up. And, you know, I know that as I came into this year, even with all of the open-ended questions and, you know, what is this going to look like? I've set, you know, some modest expectations, knowing that transition years are rarely, you know, knocking the ball out of the park. We're just looking to play. You know, if we get to do this, that's gonna scratch that itch tremendously. And it knowing that you guys are in charge of this thing, I think Rick and I have enough experience with you guys at Legends and the Legends team to know that you're going to do great with whatever with the options that you have. And in a transition year, man, here's the cards that are dealt. And you know, Bob and Joe, you guys are going to play them the best way that's possible, given the constraints or the time frame. Sounds like that's what it feels like. Or
we'll completely bluff, right? Which we've done that in the past too.
Yeah, I mean, fair. Dude, bluffing is fair.
Go for it. Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, it's playing the cards are dealt, right? But
I think Birmingham. Go ahead. No, I was going to say, is Birmingham a longer term solution, or is it a 1 year, or are you not at liberty to discuss yet?
Yeah, I'm not at liberty to discuss that yet.
Okay. All right.
But here's what I would say. I would say all options are on the table.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, who knows? You know, I'm sure HQ has their wish list when they go to a new location, when they move from Carson to Madison and Madison out of Fort Worth. There's some stability. If you get a field of play that the event can be held at and is good and as you described, then you might want to keep rolling there as long as it's a good experience all around. Or you say, hey, this is a traveling show and we're going to showcase our athletes in another city next year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and there's a little bit of a feel out process for everybody, right? I mean, there is a feel out process between us and HQ, you know, and there was a feel out process there's one between us and Birmingham, and like we all kind of just need to get comfortable with each other. You know, Legends and HQ, we're totally comfortable with each other. Like we're humming together at this point. We know really how to work together. We know how to leverage each other's strengths. That dynamic is fantastic. We're just starting this partnership with Birmingham. But
that's fair.
The initial feedback is they're willing to work with me on a lot of things. Right. Like I'll give you guys an example. So, most, convention centers, they single source catering to a single company. Right.
Yep.
And you, as an event operating there, have to use their catering no matter what.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I very clearly had the conversation with them that, look, the athletes need to be able to bring their own food and eat whatever they want to eat. Like that's a non-negotiable, right? Like you guys can't be expected to be fed convention center catering.
Correct. Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, cool, no problem. You know, my staff and volunteers, you know, same thing. I want to be able to feed them the high quality food that they're expected to be fed. They're working their asses off for, you know, 4+ days. Came to an agreement on that. Right. So like they're very open and amenable to suggestions. So it's just the start of a good sign from a partnership perspective there.
That's the way to kick it off. Can I ask, when I zoom in on on the BJCC there in Birmingham, in downtown Birmingham. It looks like it's quite a footprint. And I see the exhibition hall, which is, I think you're calling, that's the convention center, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
The large space. There is also a Legacy Arena, which I think is used for some other stuff. Is that part of the competition, or at this point are we left guessing? And that's great if we are.
No, I don't want to leave you guys guessing. So at this moment, totally 100% subject to change. At this moment, the Legacy Arena is not in play. But we are exploring possibilities to leverage Legacy Arena. There's also a really cool, there's a huge football stadium, right, where UAV plays.
Right down the street. I've seen that on the map. Yeah.
There's all sorts of great trails around Birmingham. There's lakes. Like there's all sorts of stuff, man.
Read you loud and clear. Well,
part of,
I don't know how close HQ got to Birmingham whenever that was talked about a while back, but obviously something about Birmingham got them to that maybe very close stage. It was the amenities and the city and the location. So I think you're starting off on a good foot. That look, it's already, the tires have kind of already been kicked, and now it's time for you to lay down the big mat and work from there.
There was a lot of work that was done, and it's really helpful, working with the staff that did some like pre-planning, they're familiar with the site and familiar with the people there, and a lot of introductions were made from HQ in order for me to kind of get in there. I really don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but I'm going to anyway. I've heard from both sides that deal was very far from ever being completed. It was something that somebody in the press ran with that wasn't really true. Like they were on a site visit, and that was kind of the extent of it. But it'll go on. It'll go to show you like how thorough HQ is. Like I have a mountain of information and resource that I can leverage from them to help plan. So they do a very thorough job when they do this stuff.
It also shows you how tight-lipped your team had to be leading up to this, because we didn't need any in this transition year. We didn't need any false alarms. So kudos there
for sure.
Joking. Is it? Can I ask if it's not true that Jason wrote a huge check to bring you there so that he didn't have to travel very far? That's a rumor that's flying around too, I'm pretty sure.
No, he did not write a huge check. But I am open to smaller checks. I'm not gonna lie. The window isn't closed just yet.
All right.
I loved
already planning
his
2024
post yesterday.
It was fun.
The Chuck Norris-esque post. That was awesome, man.
That was
fantastic.
Fun. I know. Yeah. I was like, oh God, here it is. Wait for
it's really bizarre to create a meme for yourself, but I was on a phone call and it came out and I was like, oh, I gotta post something like that. That's funny. I think it's funny.
Fuck yeah,
and if it wasn't funny, I was going to remove it immediately. So,
we all got a good laugh.
Yeah. Bob, I know we've all been starving for information, right? I've sent you messages from time to time saying, hey man, you got anything? And, as far as I know, this couldn't have been announced earlier. This wasn't something that you've been sitting on, and this has been in the works for months, and finally HQ released it. So talk about the timing of the release.
Yeah. It wasn't. I mean, we've been, as I said, like we've been scouring, to find a site for months and months. And quite frankly, we're just running into roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And most of it was around the date. The date that I really wanted was the weekend before Labor Day weekend, right? Like that would, to me, would have been the ideal date. And everywhere I looked, where all the rest of the criteria fell into place, like it just, that wasn't going to work. Right. Yeah. Right. Totally booked.
Yep.
And then finally I I backed off of that as a demand and recognized, okay, I just have to be flexible here, or else, this is going to drag out too long and it's going to have a negative impact on the community. And so, buckled up, did my site visits, and then had to work through the contract with Birmingham right before HQ can release anything. And that all I signed the contract on Sunday. So
wow.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, and people who run businesses understand that contract processes are it's not an easy thing to do, right?
No.
I mean, everybody loves to read about indemnification in their spare time, but when it comes down to
you didn't hear that
determining,
from me.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I like to just copy and paste it in a chat GPT and just ask, hey, is this contract any good? And it's totally fine. Well, it's, there was two parts to the announcement that were interesting. One, we've got dates and times, and we finally know. And again, I want to say, well done. Again, I know you've been working on it, and to be able to, you signed it last Sunday, and we know what the season looks like now before the Open starts. That was, I'm sure, a huge target, right? That we got to get this out before the season actually starts. So kudos to you for making that happen. But the other part of the announcement was this Teams business, which everywhere I'm going, in most of the messages that came in yesterday, except for the ones where like, hey, are you upset that the Games is coming to Birmingham? Besides that one, I was, I'm like, I love it. I'm excited. I sleep in my own bed. But the Teams, people wanted details. So tell us about, that idea and what that's going to look like that weekend.
Yeah. So really that was, again, collaboration with HQ and thoughts around, how do we increase the footprint of this? How do we make this more attractive for sponsorship? How do we make it more attractive for on-site vendors? How do we increase the audience? Right. All of that kind of came into account. We were kicking around a bunch of ideas and we're like, well, why don't we have a community event running at the same time? They're not competing at the CrossFit Games. They're competing at a community team event that just so happens to be run out of the same venue at the same time as the CrossFit Games. I need to be very, very clear about that. The winning team will not be crowned the fittest team on earth, right? But it will be all high-level athletes. So we wanted to, as one of the requirements, that all the athletes need to have competed in the quarterfinals, right?
Gotcha.
So, at a bare minimum, you have to have competed in the quarterfinals. And really, the thought around it is, let's make the footprint of the event bigger. It doesn't really contribute a lot to revenue. Just to be really candid on that, 50 teams, you're looking at like 60 grand in revenue, but then we gotta put uniforms on them, signage made, right? Like you're looking at barely a break even, right? It doesn't really contribute a lot to profit directly, but it does contribute to the experience for everyone involved. And so that was really kind of the idea. Like, how do we maximize the experience? How do we make, the Masters Games a bigger event in the community? Yeah. So that was the idea.
That was exciting fun to at see Legends when that part came out.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. And at Legends, that's one thing I noticed is that Legends felt like there was a lot of spectators there. It felt like there was a lot of action going on. And there were a lot of spectators, but there were also the teams that were there that were also in the mix. So they're participating, they're watching and cheering. I think that makes for, the more warm bodies around at a competition like that, the more fun it is experientially as competitors on the floor. For me, of course, I'm going to be watching if I'm not, overlapping too much on my time frames, but I'm going to watch teams. If I've got people I want to watch, I'll watch those team events and be able to participate in that entire overall event. So, I think it's a great idea. Now, so to quarterfinals, they have to have competed in quarterfinals.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Now the qualification process for the Masters Games, just to be clear, because we've, every once in a while people do get this little bit confused that the Legends Championship is different than the CrossFit Games or the Masters Games by Legends. These are two separate events, two separate qualifiers, right? The games have our standard qualification process that we've had historically. We've got the open, quarterfinals, semifinals, games. And Legends will have its own qualifier. And you guys typically do that in August, a virtual qualifier?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's actually going to be September this year.
Excellent. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So just making that uber clear to the audience that that's its own event. The games are its own event. And then the team event that is happening, which is a community event, at the same time, same place, same venue as the games, which is just a great way to phrase all of that. Cool. Just making that clear, making sure people know how to get there.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks,
Jason's jumped around this a couple times too. I guess I need to ask this question. What are we allowed to call it, or does it have an official name yet?
Which part?
The CrossFit.
The team?
Yeah, no, the games. The CrossFit Games presented by Legends, or
it's the CrossFit Games.
CrossFit Games. Okay.
Yeah.
Is Legends part of the name, or
people throw it in there? I mean, I don't really care.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Cool.
I think people throw it in there.
Easier for us to say. That's fine.
I think they throw it in there to satisfy, they think they're satisfying my and Joe's ego, but like, honestly, we don't care. So
your egos are fine. You guys are healthy human beings. Good.
Totally. Yeah.
Is the programming shared? I think that was talked about, starting like open, quarters, semis.
Oh, I thought you were asking me to share with you the programming.
No, I'm sorry.
That would be great too. We would like to ask that too.
So lay it out there. Put up a whiteboard. No, like the open programming is generally, HQ's responsibility. When is there a collaborative effort, and at what point might that start, or what can we expect from programming?
So already started. And I'll just, give you guys the breakdown of how it works. So, and it's kind of the same way it works with Legends. I come up with a bunch of batshit crazy ideas. And then I bounce those ideas off of Joe and Boz. And they put a lot of refinement around it.
Okay.
And, it convinced me that I can't program a games that would be specifically programmed for me, and that I do need to create a little bit more variety, and we kick it around. But it's, I mean, look, the process that Joe and I have had in the past is, it's like we kick the ideas around a bunch of times. Right. So we'll probably make 10 or 12 revisions during the course of our, like 10 or 12 official revisions during the course of our programming. And we look for a lot of the same things that HQ looks for, as far as, balance and making sure that we're kind of hitting everything that needs to be hit, and time domains, and, are you hitting monostructural, and are you hitting gymnastics and weightlifting, and like, what's the rate at which you're hitting them? Is it, is everything hinging, or is everything squatting? Right. Joe and I do that in a very informal way, I would say.
Kind of spread it out.
What Boz has introduced to us is a much more scientific and sophisticated way, which ultimately is going to cut the revisions down from 12 to like 5. And so it's cool, man. Like, as a programming nerd, like this is why I do this. It's for the programming. It's so much fun to me. And to be able to sit virtually across the table from Boz and kick around ideas.
That's a highlight.
It's fun, man.
How does that mix come into play, or does it come into play as early as the Open or quarterfinals or semifinals, or is that only games?
Semifinals and games.
Semifinals and games. Great. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. But we're working to make sure that there's, continuity of thought all the way through.
Gotcha.
Sure. Okay.
Oh boy. Yeah. There's a lot coming down the road here.
Yeah.
The things are such gold, right? That you know the end result of the games, workouts, and the semifinals, and the continuity of all of that, which means you probably have some ideas about some of what we're about to go through in this season. And as a programmer and competitor myself, like that's just, I know you're retired from competition, but there's got to be some parts of that that's so delightful. Like, and I don't even think that I can't imagine you feel FOMO, but more excitement around, I know what they're going to go through. I know what you've been through, what it's like to go through all that stuff. And I imagine that you could just say to us, buckle up, guys. And that would be a fair statement,
It's going to be fun. I can tell you, this, guys. I tested one of them somewhat recently, and we were going through cuts and revisions, and this one workout was like on the chopping block, and I was like, guys, like, I know I don't have veto power here, but like, I want to try and exercise veto power. Like, this one is just too gross to take out. Like, it's just it's so awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
I've experienced some gross workouts programmed by you. So just to know the category of gross and know what you've programmed in the past, it does make me excited. And I like gross. Gross is great, in workouts. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I love sneaky type of workouts. I love workouts where, like, you have to be thinking through the workout. Right. Mm-hmm. And, and I love thinking about, like, oh, well, what if we flipped it? What if we went from low rep to high rep, or, like it's so much fun to kind of see the differences in how people would attack workouts, based on just little things like that, which is great. Like the canvas is limitless, and this is my art, and I get it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
So when we have you back on after, when we have you back on after, we'll talk about the story that was written starting with the Open all the way through.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Sure.
I'm actually looking forward to that. That'll be fun.
That'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Jason, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I saw a comment that the ocean swim can be ruled out as an event at the games in Birmingham. So we can say we will not be swimming in the ocean. And that's
with a moderate degree of confidence. I can say that.
Moderate degree of confidence. I mean, it is a blank canvas, but the ocean is 4 hours away. And let's get 450 athletes down to Mobile, or not Mobile. Whatever's on the coast. Mobile. I don't know Alabama well yet. Okay.
Yeah. Could be a long ruck. I mean
that would be great. Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. That brings up the question around, sponsors. Do you know in what's going on with sponsors, equipment at the Games for Masters? Any interesting info on that?
Well, I can share. Rogue is the equipment sponsor, right? I can share that Northern Spirit is the gear provider. So they're a European company, so most Americans probably aren't aware of them. But they'll be providing the athlete kits and all of that cool stuff.
Cool.
And really neat guys to work with. And we have time zone challenges. They're in France, and Joe and I are in California. Jason is in Missouri, right? And so but they're cool guys, and they're looking at a lot of fun activation that they can do at the event as well.
Cool.
But we're reaching out to non-traditional sponsors as well, based on our demographic, and and trying to get them locked in as well. So
Let's get Ford trucks out there, man. You know, it'd be great.
Yeah.
And to also confirm, Legends, is that expected to be back in the Phoenix area in December next year? Or okay, so that's something that, again,
it's the
highlighting
second week of December. Yep.
Okay, second week. There you've got a playbook and you kind of know how things run.
That will look exactly the same as it did this past year.
Okay.
Second week of December, same size field. We're going to keep teams. Right. Probably, I'm not 100% if we're keeping scaled or not.
Okay.
It's that decision is really up to Joe. Yeah.
So Arizona, with a pretty good feeling from the cooperation that you received from the university, how the event ran, the feedback from the sponsors, the athletes, and everything.
Yeah, that was the best one we've ever run.
Okay, that's really good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, we want to be sensitive to your time. I know you've got a couple of you've got a lineup this afternoon of conversations like this. Do you have any message that you would like to share with the Masters athletes out there? You know, is anything that we didn't ask that we should have asked, or anything you'd like to share to all of them?
So I think it's really important that people understand, you know, Masters have the opportunity to step up and take control of their event, right? And the way to do that is really through open participation, right? But I would say more importantly, it's the quarterfinal and the semifinal participation. We do have a financial arrangement where we are receiving, you know, money from CrossFit HQ that is tied to participation in the quarterfinals and semifinals, right?
Okay.
So, you know, the more Masters show up, and you know, you want to make your voice heard as a Masters athlete or someone who wants to support the Masters community, make sure you sign up for the quarterfinals, man. Like there's nothing more important than that. That is the single best way for you to have your voice heard, and the single best way, quite frankly, for us to throw the best event we can for you.
Excellent.
All right.
Looking forward to that.
And awesome. We'll encourage that as well. You know, this is a vote with your dollars type situation. Vote with your participation. Vote with your dollars. Supporting the games for Masters is quarterfinals and semifinals. Let's do it. You know, we've got a lot of people that will qualify. Let's max those out and have some fun while we're at it.
Yeah, exactly.
August 29th to September 1st.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Whatever Labor Day weekend is.
Yep.
You know. Hey, I have one last question. Just one last question. I forgot to ask this. How many days of competition?
4.
4 days of competition.
Okay.
Totally subject to change. Subject to change.
Yep.
Yes.
Love that.
But,
last question. When when announcements come out, should they be going to the game site? I mean, games.crossfit.com, and that's where we'll see more information about lodging, about events center, about just the logistics. Go to CrossFit site.
Yeah, so that it'll come from both of us. Like every time, it'll be coming from both of us. But they have a slightly larger reach than we do. So
fair, sure,
yeah,
excellent. I forgot.
Well, Bob, thanks, man.
Thank
Dude, we appreciate
awesome
your time.
You guys, man.
Thanks for all that you do, man.
Likewise.
See you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Masters in Motion podcast. We'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us reach more listeners and grow our Masters community. Until next time, get bolder, not older.